Hey, this is Mike from the One Stop Co-op Shop, and today I'm doing a review of Lunar Rush, a competitive and solo Euro about delivering goods to and from the moon. And disclaimer that I got a review copy of this one. And also a disclaimer that I'm friendly with the designer and friends with his brother Will the Hungry Gamer. In Lunar Rush, 1 to 4 players bid over the ability to send ships on these different routes, both to and from the moon, managing a base on the moon and trying to make precious resources to send back to Earth, to sell in a terrestrial market that changes with supply and demand. So let's discuss 5 key things to know about Lunar Rush. So my number 5 point, the least important to know, but still important or I wouldn't include it on the list, is that market I mentioned. This is a pro for my taste. As players or bots bring these goods from the moon and sell them, the relative price for those goods will go down, but then when it isn't sold for a while, they bounce back up. And you can vary up the markets with 1 of 3 boards, and some of them even have the prices fluctuating up and down throughout the game. It's a pretty straightforward system. It's very easy to manage, but it does give more meaning to how quickly or slowly you get your goods into market, because you can undercut your rivals for the best prices. My number 4 point for the game is a mix, and that's the bot that allows solo play. So first of all, the bots are very nice in that they're super simple to run. You don't need anything for them except these 4 decks of cards and their basic ships. And these cards model their bidding for routes, which routes they prefer, and what they're shipping on those routes. And besides that, you just keep track of their victory points and see how well they do in the end. Another great thing about the bots is that you can use them to fill out the player count even in competitive games, because the game has some variant rules you have to use for 2 players in the game that can be a little swingy and random, so it's really nice to always be able to play with at least 3 factions in-game if you need to. But on the negative side, the cards which determine which routes the bot takes, as well as what they bring up and down, can be pretty random and swingy, and also the bot is fairly exploitable, especially if you take up all the routes that bring the most stuff down to Earth, then they get really stymied in their victory point generation. My number 3 point is another pro overall, and that's the base management and the actions you resolve on your turn. So you have these astronauts in orbit, you can bring more from Earth, and it's basically a little worker placement puzzle. You're using them to generate life support, power, the different resources you can send back to Earth, and you can upgrade all these buildings and even add more, especially with these specialized gold modules that change from game to game. And the really cool part of this is that to do all that upgrading and to build the most important resources, you need to have these materials that you can technically build in-house, but it's incredibly slow and uses up all your astronauts. Or if you plan well, you can instead bring them in from Earth and fast-track your development, and eventually get a ton of astronauts working tons of upgraded buildings. But the game also gives you some nice give and take, because if you spend too much time upgrading your buildings, since the game only lasts 7 rounds, you might not have enough time to actually generate the resources that get you victory points and win you the game. My number 2 point is also a mix, and that's the overall variety and replayability of the game. Now let me be clear, there's a lot to vary up in the game. First of all, you can play with this Moon Wonders module, where you're combining these adjectives and nouns to add score multipliers for each game. There's also, as I mentioned, a ton of different gold modules you can use. They have different beginner goals to help people in learning the game, different factions with minor powers that affect the play, challenge cards that can balance out the difficulty between an experienced player and a newbie. But putting all that to the side for a moment, the core cycle of bringing stuff to the moon and from the moon, of upgrading your base, which doesn't have that many options besides the gold modules, of bringing materials, of bringing in astronauts, can, in my experience, get a little bit repetitive and see players following similar tracks game to game. But my number 1 point is back to a full-on pro, my favorite thing about the game, the thing you should most know about, and those are the lunar routes and the different speeds that you're bidding for, which is kind of the heart of the game. Because each round the players bid, and it gives them first choice in whether they want a fast route to the moon or a medium route back to Earth. And the faster your route, the faster you get there. So for going to the moon, you can get those materials to upgrade your base that you want. And coming back to Earth, you can sell your goods in the market before the prices get tanked. So obviously you want to have the fastest ship possible, right? But the medium launches, which take 2 whole rounds to get to the moon, or the slow launches, which take 3, drastically increase the amount of stuff you can bring to or from the moon, how much you can bring to market, how much you can send up to help your colony. So that interplay, that tension, those tough choices every round, and how it affects everything else you're doing in the game, really all 4 of my other points, is just a great and unique system, and I really enjoy it. So overall, if you want a fairly quick playing Euro with a fun spin on the usual economic action thanks to the route mechanics here, Lunar Rush is one to check out. But on the other hand, without the upcoming expansion they're going to have a campaign for, I think the gameplay can get a bit repetitive. And while the solo bots play smoothly, they can be pretty swingy, and you can get giant scores on them if you play your cards right. And if you want to see the game in action, my prototype play from when it was on crowdfunding is pretty much identical to the final product, and I'll also have a preview of the game with its upcoming expansion later on. Good gaming, and I'll see you at the next stop.